All right, in this demo, we are going to do the applied band. All right, this is something you'd probably see on a pair of tuxedo pants. You can create the effect of the stripe going down the tuxedo pants with this method. All right, so I have my two sides of my garment. So you can consider like the front and back pant leg, and they have a right and wrong side. The right side has the lines on it, and the wrong side doesn't. And then I have my bias strip here. Okay, if you want to, if you need to find out how to cut, find bias and cut it, there's a link in the comment section or in the section below where you can find that. All right, so here I've cut a 3-inch wide bias strip. All right, it also has a right side marked by these lines and then nothing on the other side. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take one side of our garment, which is represented by this rectangle here, and we're going to put the right side, okay, of our bias strip right against that, lining it up with the cut edge where the seam will be. Okay. And I'm just going to go ahead and pin that in place just so it doesn't move around too much on us. Alright, so I want to determine how wide I want my bias or my applied band to be when it's done. Alright, so if I mark on here, just so you can see it, let's see, this will have a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so I'll mark on that 1/2 inch. So this broken line represents my 1/2 inch seam allowance. All right, so this is the stitching line. So everything from that broken line to the cut edge, that's all seam allowance, a 1/2 inch seam allowance. All right, so if I were to only sew this applied band on at 1 inch, which would bring me to about here, when everything's done, I'd only end up with a 1/2 inch strip going down my seam. All right, I want one a little bigger than that. So I cut 3 inches, so I should be able to get away with 1 inch because I have another 1.5 inches I can fold back. So I'm going to mark this on here. I'm just going to mark another inch. Now I'm going to mark that inch based off of my stitching line, okay? Or I can mark 1.5 inches based off the cut edge, whichever is the easiest for you. So let's just go ahead and mark that on there, just so you can see. Get an idea. There we go. Okay, so this is where I want to stitch this piece of bias on at, right along this edge. All right, so let's go ahead to the sewing machine and do that. All right, we're at our sewing machine here, so let's go ahead and stitch this band on. Again, I have the right sides together, and I'm going to stitch it on at 1.5 inches from the cut edge. So right about there. And let's go ahead and do that. This is permanent, so back tack, beginning and end. And there we go. All right, so there it is, stitched on. All right, let's go back to the cutting table. All right, now that we're back, what we want to do is, again, this is going to be my seam in here, and this is going to fold over into that seam allowance, like so. All right, I don't want to allow bulk there, so everything that's here by my seam allowance on this side of the stitching line, I'm going to trim back. I can actually trim back all this as well. I always like to cut mine extra long, just in case. And then what I'll do is I'll just trim this back to about a 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch. It's about a 1/4 inch. There we go. All right, now what we need to do is press this over towards that seam allowance. So we'll go ahead and do that now. So press it nice and clean right towards the seam allowance. There it is. All right. So now we can take the other side of our garment, which is represented by this square right here, and we can put right sides together, lining up the cut edge, all the cut edges like so. And I'll just throw a couple pins in there to hold it in place. All right, and now we can go ahead and stitch this at whatever our intended seam allowance was, in this case a 1/2 inch. So let's go ahead and stitch up that seam. All right, so we'll sew this at a 1/2 inch. This is a permanent seam, so we'll back tack at the beginning and end. There we go. It's now been stitched. Open it up and see what it looks like. All right. Let's go ahead back to the ironing board and press that seam open. All right. So we're going to press this seam open now. Be a little bulky depending on the fabric you're using, but and there it is, the applied band. Okay? So it's totally set in there, and all your edges are clean on the outside. Alright, so that's the front. That's what the back looks like. And again, this is something you might see like on how you might create the tuxedo stripe on a pair of tuxedo pants. Okay? So that is the applied band. Good luck.